Okay, welcome everybody to Advisory Design Panel for July 16th, 2020. We start the meetings by acknowledging that the meeting is being held on Squamish Nation traditional territory. First item would be typically a roll call to check everyone who's here. So I'm going to go through some names just to, and everyone can just put a hand up or say yes. So David? Yes. Mike Van Capel? Yep. There he is, yeah. Tennis? No tennis today? Okay. Jenna? Here for the first one, yes. Sarah is here.
Rebecca.
Jackie is here. Graham?
Yes, here. I can't see you though.
You can't see mine?
I had the screens and then it started swirling again.
Uh-oh. Okay. As long as you can hear us for now, hopefully that's going to start working on your internet. Graham is not here. Not present. Brent is here. Carlos is here. Farzin? Yep. Yes, there we go. Christina? No Christina today. And myself. Okay. So we would go to procedures, which typically I have to read at the beginning of the meeting for these electronic meetings. And what I'll say is committee members attending the meeting electronically are required to advise the chair of the meeting of the following circumstances. A, when the committee member disconnects or reconnects, enters or exits the meeting so that this can be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. B, committee members are to identify themselves when they advise the chair they wish to be placed on the speaker's list. C, with respect to a vote, committee members are only required to say nay, vote. No statement is required if the member is in favor. D, committee members shall put the telephone or computer on mute unless they wish to speak. That includes presenters as well, please. E, committee members shall be involved in and participate in the meeting. F, committee members shall text the chief, the CAO, or the appropriate person if they are having technical difficulty with their telephone or computer. So typically at this point we get the phone number on the chat room. So if anyone drops off, they can call that number to report that they're trying to log back in. Who would we call in that case in this circumstance? Usually it's Jonas.
Jonas is away this week. You'll be calling Terry. The phone number is text. Okay, and then 604.
Put it up on the chat if you want.
Terry will put it up on the chat.
Okay, awesome. Great. And then G, the meeting shall be recessed for up to 10 minutes if a technical difficulty occurs on the district side, which results in the committee member being unable to connect to the meeting. From there, we're going to go into adoption of the agenda. Can we have someone to move?
I move.
Jackie, second. Okay, anyone against? No. So we've moved to the agenda. We would next go into committee minutes for last meeting, which is June 18th. Any comments from anyone on those minutes? Any changes suggested? Everyone's happy with them?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll have a mover to adopt those minutes. Sarah, in second. Farzin, thank you. Anyone against? No? Okay, those are adopted. And the first business arising is a redo of DB 507-39399 Queensway. And I'll hand over to the presenter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Advisory Design Panel. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the District of Squamish, here today to present again a development permit application for 2 new industrial buildings located at the north end of the Sea to Sky Business Park. The proposed buildings have a total gross floor area of 3,300 square meters, and it is located in the Business Park Industrial I-11 zone. The proposed development is located in Development Permit Area 3, the Universal Guidelines, and is subject to the applicable development permit guidelines. The project was previously presented to ADP on February 20th, 2020, and was given a C by the panel. and asked to return. Staff are seeking again ADP's expertise and recommendations on building form, character, materials, and landscaping as it pertains to the guidelines. The applicant does seem to have addressed many of ADP's comments, and those were detailed for you today in the report. The building as proposed does meet the general intent of the guidelines at this time, and there are still a couple things that need to be met, but is sufficiently meeting guidelines to be presented to ADP again. So we'll hand it over now to the architect, Colin Kwok, and Terry will just get you all set up there. You're good to go? Okay, so Colin, you can share your screen, which is through the...
Great.
There we go.
All right. Everybody with me? Can I be heard?
We can hear you, but we just see, oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having us here. We have spent the last couple of months working with Jessie and Squamish to update our proposal. I will go through our some of the renderings that we've made that are not in your package, and after that we'll go through a list of the items that we have addressed in this resubmission, and we'll go from there. So here goes. So this is the view from the street. We'll come back to this one in the future, but this is a streetscape showing our building as well as the rest of the street as it is right now. We have articulated the front facade a little bit more to give it a little bit more relief and changed up the signage. We will talk about that in a bit too. We did, yeah. We have redesigned the canopies. They are a little higher, a little lighter, and a few other things which we will also talk about in a minute. And you may have noticed that the color of the building has changed from gray to dark blue. This is our wonderful garbage shack with bicycle parking that will be behind it. These are the lots in question. And we also have civil drawings and landscaping, but we will wait for Travis to present that. And we don't have to go through all the drawings unless you have anything specific you need to look at. So let me get out of this, and we're over here. So we'll start with the form and character of what we were trying to do. We had to relook at the massing, and we've kind of tried to create an abstract representation of the Squamish Chief, in the sense that there are three main elements to the mountain, three little summits, and with gaps in between them. We did change the name of the project. I'll just talk about that for a second. Art Space seems to be confusing a lot of people, so we've just changed it to Summit Industrial Park. And yeah. So this document is, I won't read it in detail, but we were looking at both the darker colors as well as some natural cedar signs. There's some references to the adventure part of Squamish, ice climbing equipment, the technical that are the other one, climbing axes and bicycle bits and things like that. And hopefully that will read in the lights and the structure that we're doing to the building. Most of the stuff is covered in the notes that you got for the minutes. The one thing that we did do was that we did redesign the wood awning so that they are a little bit more lighter, as was commented before, and we've changed the signage so that it's not on banners anymore. We decided that it's probably a good decision because managing strata councils is very complicated in terms of making sure that everybody does something that is in the deeper future to make all the signage look good. And then we went through all the sustainable stuff as well as the other notes around the development permit area 3 guidelines. Yeah, well, let's get back to this image. I can zoom in on my computer, which helps, I think, just to give it a little tour of what we're doing. So these are the existing buildings that are to the south of our site. Perhaps you guys recognize them. So there's one project here, another one there, and this is the Seven Skies project, which we presented a couple months ago. This is our neighbor immediately between us, and then this is our project here. And this is the Quonset hut next door to us and a bunch of shipping containers. We hope that what we're trying to do is to meet the goals of the development permit area guidelines of Squamish for the continuing evolution of the area. And we hope that the buildings will be something that ages well and kind of lasts into the future and not be something that is either immediately dated or anything like that. There's a couple of other points. We'll probably get into that in the question period. One of the big concerns that was raised both by Jessie as well as other people were the permeability of our paved area. We've had discussions with our civil. I'll get to the civil drawing here. With our civil engineer, and the area where I'm drawing with my cursor is the big retention pond, which is buried underneath the parking lot, and that actually is permeable, so water is trickling down into the ground from this permeable holding tank. One of the advantages of doing this way, as opposed to having the entire parking lot permeable, is that this is an industrial park, and we don't know what people are going to be doing in and around their units. And anything that spills on the ground, we don't necessarily want it to be immediately absorbed into the ground where it can't be cleaned up. So this at least gives an ability to be able to clean up anything that spills on the parking lot before it reaches the catch basins and gets into the filtration tank. So that was the only thing that might not be fully clear, but I'm sure there's going to be other questions that will come up, and we'll go from there. I will turn it over to Travis to talk about landscaping for a minute. What we have done, which I'm not sure whether anybody has had a chance to look at in detail, we have straightened out and widened the accessible crosswalks, as well as moved the tree islands to accommodate the rearranging of all the parking. We have tidied up the loading spaces so that there is room on the ends of them for maneuvering as well as for unloading and loading. One of the things I like about this arrangement is that L1 and L2 are right next to each other. So if any vehicle is larger than it is than the 30-foot loading space, it can be accommodated if both spaces are booked for unloading or special loading or something like that. Other than that, the other major thing that we did was that we have included a shower in each unit, which is the end-of-trip facility for people who will be cycling, as well as a Class A lock-up hole bike storage underneath the stairs of each unit. As it wasn't entirely clear, I just wanted to clarify that each one of these units is going to be sold as one thing. So they are one tenant, and the upstairs and downstairs will be the same entity. And other than that, I will pass it off to Travis, and he can perhaps kind of fill us in a bit on some of the landscaping notes and how that has, it's changed slightly as we straighten the path and made it a little bit more gentle.
Hi, Travis here. Thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me?
I hear you.
Good. Just to confirm what Colin has explained about the pathway from your recommendations, I've looked at the Rick Hansen Foundation Universal Design recommendations, as well as using the BC Building Access Handbook. This is not a ramp, it's a pathway, but it does exceed what we had presented before. The slope is slightly lower than we had. We've increased the size of the landings so that they exceed the 1.5 meter suggested. And as well, they're widened as well. One of them is a completely straight pathway that reaches the upper and lower landing, and the other one has just the slightest of gentle curve to work with the landscape. In this frontage area of landscape, we did make some small adjustments, mainly with the front street trees. We moved them closer to the building to stay as far away as we could from the site services, the civil, and now that the trunks are within the property line. Another change we made is with the bike spaces themselves. We, based on your recommendations, used a new model so that there's 2 touch points, and we increased the spaces by 2. And I think, as Colin said, a lot of stuff was, rearranging and getting, fine details in the planting plan, as well as the movements of the parking islands to make sure that we had accessible pathways throughout the site. I think I could just leave it right there for now and wait for the questions and comments.
Is that everything?
Yeah, that's everything.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, well, with the questions that we had in mind from last meeting, which is the guidelines, and we've got a list of which guidelines we were especially curious about from last meeting. I'll hand over to the panel to ask questions, and hopefully we'll stick within those groupings of concerns. I will start with Carlos today, if you're ready. With questions.
I'm ready, but I don't have any questions, John.
Okay, that's fair enough. Brent would be next.
Thanks, John. The only question that I had was, what is the width of the asphalt pathway in, along Queensway?
The width of the asphalt is 1.8 meters.
Okay, and that's the section that runs along the front of the building, right? Yeah, street side of the building.
Oh, give me one moment. So that we have at 3.7 feet.
A note for everybody that is not the accessible part of the walkway.
So there's still access, though, to the units from that side. I understand. Is there access to those units from that side?
That's right. It's a Queensway, but it wouldn't function more as a back entrance than anything, as the main side of the building is on the inside.
Okay. That's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Jackie next. You're still muted, Jackie. There we go.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you for addressing all our issues from the last meeting. The question I had was, I was just looking it up on the list here. The awning and heavy timber canopy with glass doesn't work. Why was that not addressed?
It actually was addressed. I think in the communication, the note that I went through with you earlier was written in about mid-April, and I guess communication with Jessie in the meantime, that kind of just got lost in my checklist I sent back to her a few times, and so that didn't show up, but it was fully redesigned.
Okay.
It's got a bit more interest to it as well, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's more interesting form and courage not addressed, and I think it looks a little more interesting, but could you address that in how it's changed from the last one?
Sure. Can I kidnap the screen again? Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
We'll get into... Here we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I can.
So what we did previously was that this main support timber was below the structure of the joist rather than within the depth of it, so that it was much bulkier. And what we did was if you look on our elevations, you can see that there's a sign panel that's going to be above the garage doors, where my arrow is pointing right now. So we lifted the whole canopy, and it feels a little bit lighter. We also extended some decorative stringers on the outside to define the unit and also to kind of give it a bit more of a feel, inspired by the wings of ravens and eagles and things like that. And then in between these canopies, that will be the part that's infilled with glass. So it was fully rethought about. I think that the comment last time was somebody thought it just looked a little too chunky, and it was lower and it did feel a bit heavier. So yeah, I hope that addresses that.
Okay, thank you. And the signage from the street to the facility, I can't remember. We asked that it be addressed. I don't think you showed us anything in your presentation.
That is, if you can bear with me for 2 seconds, I will call up the drawing. Sorry about this. You can right here. Signage. We are proposing to have the signage, which will not be on banners, but will be metal letters that are raised above a piece of wood. And large wood piece would be right on the front of the unit. So here would be, sorry, go the wrong way. So it would be, and that relates to that piece that we saw on the rendering. Where am I? Here we go. This chunk of wood right here. So it's a little bit lower down when the trees grow up a little bit, and then it will provide a canopy that you can still see the signage from the roads, and hopefully it'll be more legible and make a little bit more sense in putting it on a banner.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I meant kind of the wayfinding signage from the access street, which is Government Road, I believe, into the whole space.
So this was where wayfinding or the address?
Yeah, the one that's just kind of at the entrance driveway.
Yes, that would be the numbers on the side of the building.
Okay.
And I
That's
think
nothing to indicate what's there.
Pardon me?
Nothing to indicate what's there. So what if, is this business solely, what if somebody opens up, I don't know, an artisanal space there and somebody's trying to find it? Is there is there going to be something at the driveway to help them know that it's in this spot?
I think it was a decision made with the team that we can't really put any kind of a signage by the road because of the flood hazard type, to impede the flow of water. And there are 21 units, so that's a lot of people if there's 21 separate businesses to put on another side of the building, which I think would be either too big and too much like a marquee. So maybe it's a little bit more subtle. We do live in a digital age where hopefully people will be able to get there by Google and things like that. So that was the thinking behind just having the numbers on the side of the building. So they're on both the north side as well as the south side.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Just because you asked about the canopies, we also have a slightly different canopy on the north side of this building to protect the walkway that walks around the sides to get the back of the building. And that's an addition from last time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to Sarah.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say I think that you guys addressed most everything that we had on the list, so well done. And the comments, I'll give some more.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jenna?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just had one question for Travis. I was hoping you could just confirm the species of trees that you were recommending along the property line.
Sure. They're red maples. They are the Bowell maples. And there's also an Acer saccharum. It's a species Green Mountain, and that's a species of sugar maple.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No other questions. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Mike next.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, guys. I think the only question I have is the signage for the rear building, so I guess facing west. Obviously, you're not going to see those buildings from the road, but is there a plan for putting signage on those buildings at all? I know the building facing the road has the signage, which you kind of just explained on the pieces of wood. I'm just trying to, oh, there you go.
So they're on the concrete below each individual canopy.
Gotcha. Sorry, I couldn't find that for some reason. Okay.
It's very small on the package you have, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's all I have. Thanks.
Sorry, David next. You're on mute, David. Yep.
Okay, hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
I hear you.
Good, sorry. Yeah, I think just two questions. I think it was answered because I saw a zoomed-in section. You said the canopies were now continuous. When you zoomed into that section, elevation, I could see there's like a glass panel between the two.
Correct. The wood part is just continuous to kind of give some rhythm to that elevation, but it's continuous cover with the glass.
Perfect. Okay. And then the last one was, so you've added some additional parking spaces, but it looks to be small car spaces in front of roll-up doors. Is there any concern for access or how they're assigned?
It's a tricky one. We're hoping that there will be additional parking spaces within the development so that if anybody is loading or unloading that day, they use a common space. Only the spaces that are in front of garage doors will be designated so nobody else can park in front of your door. And then the other spaces that are common would not be designated so that there's the ability to shuffle cars around if you need to move in. The idea being that that 21 people are not going to be loading and unloading at the same time.
Perfect. Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Farzan is next.
Thank you, sir. Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. I have a few questions. Colin, thank you for your presentation. For exterior finishing material, just wanted to confirm, is it a elastomeric paint on concrete? Is it what you have outside?
Yes, it's, I don't know for sure whether it's called elastomeric paint anymore, but yes, it's paint on concrete.
Okay, great. And is it considered two-story building or one plus mezzanine?
Code-wise, it's one-story building with a mezzanine.
Because some of the units I saw, it's more than 40% covered up with mezzanine. Is that okay with 40%?
The only unit that might be more than 40%, or sorry, that is more than 40% is that there is a residential suite in one of the units, and all the other units are 40%.
So that would be two-story?
No, the way the code reads is that if there's a mezzanine, then it's only counted as one story for exiting purposes.
Okay, so which one is it? The one that residential, the one at the south side, right?
That is correct, on the back.
Okay. And one more question. Do you have any, I think, any outside light? Do you have any sidewalk sign?
Sorry, say again?
Any outdoors light?
Yes.
For the signs or the market or?
Yes, they will be, the ones on the interior will be underneath the canopy. We'll have lights underneath the canopy to both light the sidewalk as well as light the sign. And then on the building, we have some large feature lights that stick out of the building that will be lighting the front facade.
That was not the presentation.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part.
I didn't see the lights on the presentation or demonstration. I think you added later.
They do actually, if you hang on a second, I'm going to kidnap your screen again. Give me 2 seconds. Oops, where are we? So if you can see, these are the big lights on the front here. So they will be lighting the front. And then lights on the back side, we didn't show those because they're underneath the canopy.
And those lights will light the signage as well?
Yes, they will light the entire front area of the building.
Okay. Thank you, John. No more questions.
Okay, thank you, President. I have no questions at this point, so I think we will go straight into round of comments. Unless anyone has any last questions. No? Okay, then we'll start with Carlos in comments.
Hey there. Yeah, so thank you for the presentation. I think that the building as proposed is improved from the last version, but I think had my little rant about the standards that we're putting on light industrial buildings and those effects on cost. So I've said it once, I won't say it again, but I appreciate the efforts that were put into this one, and I'll personally be happy to support this.
Okay, thanks, Carlos. Brent is next.
Hey, yeah, thanks for the presentation. And yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't at the previous presentation, but in the sounds of things, you sort of met most of the comments and concerns that people had. So I'll leave my comments with that. Yeah, looks pretty good to me. So, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brent. Jackie is next for comments.
Just thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you for addressing our concerns from the previous meeting. It's nice to see that the aesthetic has, it's gone from gray to blue, and some of the other awnings and other items on the facade are addressed. So thank you very much. And those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Sarah is next.
As I said before, thank you for addressing all of my accessibility concerns, and particularly looking at the RHFAC standards. That's great. Yeah, I have no comments. I think the straightened ramp that goes down to that's slightly wider is fantastic, and the covering to go from street level back into the buildings is a great addition and very affordable. So thanks very much for your efforts.
Thanks, Sarah, and we'll go to Jenna next.
Yeah, thank you so much for a great presentation. It was nice to see how it's been transforming. I think the color is really fun and playful. I appreciate the efforts on the circulation and looking at that, as well as sharing with us the advancement on the stormwater management. I think the signage is really playful and quite different, and that's great. And just as the nature of this project, being that space is very open space is quite limited by the nature of the project. As the project moves through, I just encourage as we start to see potential requirements to change trees for whatever reason, nursery stock, etc., that you hold that opportunity to have those big, robust trees along the frontage. I think what you've selected is quite fantastic. And I encourage you to hold that at the frontage of the building. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenna. Mike is next.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of comments, but just appreciate you putting in the time to address the concerns that we brought up last time. So I think there's a fair number of them, and I think the building is a lot more interesting looking, even though it's still a concrete tilt-up. So nice work. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And David?
Yeah, just think it's a much smarter building, strong but appropriate colors. I think the continuous canopy makes the development far more usable, and the additional bike spaces and shower works well and just makes the development more suited to Squamish. And I really like that the landscape color ties into the building color as well. So really appreciate the effort just to sort of lift this development up. So thank you.
Thanks, David. And Farzan?
I also think it's much improved. I think the project is much better than before, and I'm happy with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Farzan. And I do have one comment, and this is on functionality. Just a suggestion that where you have the garbage and recycling structure right now would seem to be problematic for trucks turning and going in and out of there as a hard-built structure. Also suggest that maybe the bicycle kiosk or the bicycle lockup being behind there is just a little bit out of sight and worrisome in that sense. So my suggestion would be pushing that garbage recycling back and finding a new location for that bike lockup, perhaps down by your amenity space, which is near parking stall number 53, I believe. And then it's less likely to be tampered with and out of the way of traffic and turning trucks. So that's my only comment. Otherwise, I think it's a really nice looking facility now, and appreciate your attention to the points we brought up last time. Do we need to go through, I don't think we need to go through a recommendation again, Jessie, do we?
You do, yes.
We do need to do it once again?
Yes.
Okay. I'll read the recommendations as I do so that we can choose one. Recommendation A is that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented and does not need to see the project return. B is that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to work with staff on following recommendations. C, advisory design panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to resolve recommendations and return. And D is that advisory design panel does not support the project. Any discussion on which item? A or B, I would suggest, perhaps B if we want to see them work on that garbage building.
Yeah, I was going to suggest B. I was going to suggest B just to address that garbage issue and maybe some other people might have.
Yeah, anyone else?
I think that B is a good idea too.
Okay, so Jackie would move and Farzan will second.
Yep.
Anyone against? No one against, so it's option B with the idea that they will work with staff on the recommendations or the comments that we made. Very good. Thanks very much, Jessie, and thanks very much, Colin.
Susan?
Okay, shall we take just a quick 5 minutes before
Yep.
we go on to the next project?
I was just going to say we don't have the staff person for the next project yet, so if we can take a 5-minute recess, we'll get everybody lined up.
Okay, we're taking 5 then. Okay. Item of business is Victoria Street pedestrian bridge design. And we'll hand over to our planner, Susan Stratus.
Thank you. My name is Susan Stratus. I've been working with the waterfront landing development over the past couple of years to handle various aspects of their development. And what we're looking at today is one of the community amenities that was proposed by Boza Properties as part of their development and is now reaching a design stage where we're looking for input. Next slide, Andrew. So we're going to very briefly give you an overview of the pedestrian bridge, and we're hoping to focus really on the bridge design, bridge materials, and lighting aspects, so that the bridge design team can then work on finalizing the bridge design. It was a request of council that the bridge come forward to the advisory design panel, and I recognize this isn't your typical project. And next slide. Just very briefly to show where we are, the figure 1 drawing on the left shows you the overall waterfront landing site with the Mamcock line channel separating waterfront landing from the downtown. And the pedestrian bridge is shown as a line in the Phase 2 phasing plan. And the pedestrian bridge is required prior to the final occupancy permit for Phase 2A. So both Phase 1 and 2 are under construction now, so getting the bridge design finalized is becoming fairly important. Next slide, please. I think probably one of my last comments is just how important this pedestrian bridge is as a piece of transportation infrastructure. The Boza developers have provided 2 main pieces of infrastructure. One is the rail crossing at Clark Drive that you've mostly seen as you're driving north towards Squamish. That has been constructed, and the pedestrian bridge is the second major piece of infrastructure that will link waterfront landing to the downtown, but it also provides an important connection for people who live in other neighborhoods such as Valley Cliff and areas further to the east of the waterfront landing site. The bridge construction costs are being paid for by Boza as a community amenity. Once the bridge is operational, it will become a piece of district infrastructure, and the operation costs will be borne by the district. Next slide, please. I won't read this, but over the past 2 years, 2 to 3 years, the applicants have been going through a fairly detailed approval process with Transport Canada, and the approval was granted in April of this year. And that approval includes a lot of details regarding maintaining navigation in the Mamcock line channel and how the operation of the bridge will function and be staffed to keep navigation possible. Next slide, please. And I won't read this, but an important part of the approvals are the operating schedules, which vary by season. There's a winter and summer operating season, and winter and summer operating times that are shown on the slide there that the applicant has to adhere to. And the concept is that this will be done for the first year to see how the use of the bridge is actually working out, and then there will probably be some reconsideration of these operating parameters and revising them as need be. Next slide, please. So the next steps in the process are for the design team to finish the detailed structural, mechanical, electrical, and operational design. This does need to be coordinated with flood protection works and park design that's happening on the downtown side of the project. And the district needs to issue an environmental DP for the bridge abutments on the waterfront landing side, and some DFO approvals are also required, and those applications are underway. The bridge timing, its construction is intended to start next summer, 2021, and be completed in summer 2022. And I believe that's the end of my slides. If we could switch over to the design team, I will leave this to them.
Thank you. Go ahead, Andrew.
Just
Sorry, everybody. I was joining late.
sorry,
I can share my screen. I have this.
Yeah, if you can swap the presenter over to Antonio, whoever's in charge, if possible. Thank you.
You're welcome. Antonio, you should have the ability to share your screen now.
Sorry, everybody. Just checking. Can you hear our audio okay?
Yes, we have your audio and visual.
Okay, perfect. Trying to figure out how to share screen. We'll be with you shortly. This will only take a few more seconds.
Oh, we have something now.
Can you confirm that you've got the cover of the City and Sky pedestrian bridge on the screen?
Yes, we do.
Great. Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay, so hi everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Ellie.
Great. Hi, yeah, thanks. My name's Ellie, and I'm working for Aspect Structural Engineers, and we are acting as the prime consultant on this project. So also on the line, we have Andrew from Aspect, and we have architect Antonio and Raphael from RSOR, and we also have Brendan and Paige from both properties. Another key team member who isn't on the call today is a division, and they're consulting on the substructure, the mechanical and the electrical components. Next slide, please, Antonio. So yeah, I will quickly run you through some of the key factors and site constraints we have that have been drivers during the design development of the bridge so far, and then I'll pass you over to Antonio to present the design of the bridge, which I'm sure you're far more interested in. So as Susan mentioned, the bridge will be an extension of Victoria Street and will provide a new pedestrian and cycle link from downtown Squamish to the new waterfront landing development. The cycle path will pass through the development and tie into the corridor trail. But the bridge is a key component of this trail as it will provide the link to downtown across the channel. Next slide, please, Antonio. The design life of the bridge is 75 years, and it is being designed for a 100-year sea level rise to ensure resilience against climate change. Next slide, please. So the bridge will be about 100 metres long and a minimum of 4 metres wide. This width has been determined to be suitable for multi-use paths for pedestrians and cyclists in both directions. At the west landing, the multi-use path will be integrated into the landscaping of the new Sirocco development to the north and coordinated with the new district Squamish generic park design to the south. On the east side, the bridge will land at the centralised plaza of both new development, which is where the amenity building and commercial properties are located. From this plan, you can see that we have a fairly congested site with constraints including Sirocco's proposed float home development, which is part of their big development to the north, and the potential requirement to provide access below the bridge deck to a public floating dock. We have Bosa's proposed marina on the east side of the channel, and perhaps most importantly, we have the navigation channel in the middle. Next slide, please, Antonio. So that brings us on to kind of the key design feature of this bridge, which is that it must operate to provide a clear 14.5 metre gap for boat traffic to pass through within a tight cycle time of 10 minutes set out by Transport Canada. These requirements have strongly influenced the overall design of the bridge. When we first came on board with the project, a preliminary design had been proposed, and this was for a single drawbridge, so a 14.5 metre arm stabilised by a 7.5 metre tall column at the pivot point with tension cables. This design was not approved by the district and was deemed to be a bit too futuristic. Following this, some guidance was given by the district on what they would prefer to see, and comments included paying homage to the industrial heritage of the site. So Antonio will speak more to this a bit later on. But during the design development, we have considered various options for the movable spans, including the single draw as originally proposed. We've looked at a sliding option, a pivoting option, even a floating option, and ultimately this is where we have landed with a double drawbridge powered by hydraulic pistons. So the double draw option allows shorter cantilever spans, which saves on structural demand, materials and costs. Another benefit is it allows reduced cycle time, and it is also beneficial with other challenges we have on the site, including high wind speeds, because you can imagine having a 14.5 metre arm up in the air with high wind speeds is very challenging. So halving the length of that cantilever really helps. And also poor ground conditions, so spreading the load over 2 piers rather than 1 helps as we don't have strongest ground. 2 hydraulic pistons lift each span, and these have been chosen for dependency and long-term resilience, and they have also been designed for redundancy as per Transport Canada's requirements. To further reduce the cycle times, we have positioned the pedestrian security gates on the bridge, so you can kind of see them on the plan there, adjacent to these bump outs. So localised bump outs with seating have been incorporated to encourage pedestrians and cyclists to sit, wait and watch while the bridge opens and closes. Finally, I'll give you a quick overview of the structure. We're proposing that the bridge deck is steel bar grating sitting on steel girders. These girders span between precast concrete pile caps supported on steel pipe tube piles. The guard system is supposed to be a steel mesh, and we have weathering steel cladding elements adding to the architecture of the bridge. I'll now hand you over to Antonio to talk through the design further. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll be talking about the thought process and design principles that inform the architectural expression. We'll be talking about function, context, and program. We have analyzed dozens of precedents to research what makes a meaningful experience, from materials to shapes, finding the references that explain how the bridge not only connects point A to B, but itself with its context. We found opportunities to make space within the organization of the bridge for user activity, supported by public infrastructure, ranging from benches to viewing platforms, to the integration of cultural elements and interpretive signage. These elements will be developed in future phases. Before jumping into showing you images of the bridge, we'll talk about the rationale that generated. Where we didn't have a connection and users were forced to go around, now there is one. This element of public infrastructure enables a new circulation dynamic which connects the community. Circulation is consistent, allowing traffic flow in the body of water that expands for paddlers and rowers. The double draw articulation is added for navigation of sailboats or larger vessels. All of this is function, we'll go back to form. How does a bridge become a bridge of Squamish? Like the geological formation of a rock that has been cleft into, so are the walls of the corridor of the bridge. By recognizing surrounding elements, with identified potential views along the bridge. Respecting the 4-meter width of this corridor, lookouts are strategically located to enable pedestrians to have a moment of respite and enjoy the views. To accentuate these moments where views are promoted, the skin of the bridge drops while it runs up at the point of entry, enhancing the sense of a gateway. The exterior cladding or skin consists of vertical steel slabs that evoke the essence of the West Coast rainforest. The slabs move up and down in a system pattern. Cladding then adopts context elements and becomes a lush vertical pattern, fading towards the seating areas, maximizing view opportunities. Slabs unfold and crank, evoking the layering of the forest, a deliberate abstraction of the contextual surroundings. As mentioned, the bridge spans across the mountain blind channel with a series of programmed landscape areas and activity zones, providing opportunities for the community to engage. It aims at becoming not just a passage, but a destination, a moment for the two banks of the channel to converge. The bridge offers layers of programmatic activity. It presents an extension of the landscape, an amenity for the community, a place for users to explore and provide a different experience, a sense of place. The bridge is designed to be a coherent connection point between the Sea and Sky development and downtown Squamish. A generous extension of the platform allows for additional programmatic functions for pedestrians, as well as flexibility for a wide range of potential uses, such as a waiting area for users while the bridge is in operation. The bridge is conceived as fully compliant and accessible. It means that wheelchairs and strollers alike, just like bicycles and any footwork, will be able to use the bridge with utmost ease. The railings are also establishing safety requirements as per code. Adverse weather can cause slippery conditions. To avoid the situation, several options are available, among them a porous material to lessen the buildup of snow and ice. The proposed rating product satisfies both vehicle unloading and pedestrian comfort requirements. The closed spacing of the bearing bars offers a pedestrian-friendly opening, meeting ADA guidelines for slip resistance. It allows easy access to wheelchair and high-heel traffic while being bicycle-friendly. Illumination along the bridge will be continuous and will not create any dark or shadow areas. We'll have lighting standards located on the pedestrian route for a jet bridge and will illuminate components at ground level. Lighting will be used as a wayfinding element to delineate the pedestrian and cyclist road, as well as to emphasize architectural features. Weathered steel provides a vibrant and warm color texture to complement the surrounding elements. Steel net and railing infill has been chosen as a safety barrier because it combines functionality, aesthetic appeal, economical use of materials, and longevity. It emphasizes the architectural form without interfering with lines of sight and lighting concepts. In a more obvious study, we began to appreciate the materiality of the tight steel grating of the floor deck, weathered steel cladding, as well as the seating treatments with wood. The primary cladding element is seen here, allowing views as one is looking out of the bridge, head-on, while the secondary skin, consisting of a fine steel mesh, provides the needed safety barrier expected in a bridge. The two skin systems enable the mechanical articulation. Spaces are created as localized lookout points along the bridge, each with a unique connection to the channel and its surroundings. All systems at play can be appreciated in this view. Benches, bike rest stops, interpretive signage, double skin cladding, and floor grading. Holistic approach will be taken in coordination with the authorities having jurisdiction to develop an effective path marking strategy. The marine views have been taken into consideration, incorporating unique elements that enhance the user experience. Some ideas include 5 meters, artistic elements such as interpretive signage and stand concrete. The interpretive design elements double up as a safety barrier for mechanical systems. The variations of the massing can be appreciated on this slide, where there's a subtle rhythm going up and down. The geometries of the bridge will inform the shapes of benches within, while keeping a safe distance from edges at all times. The control room carries the same language as that of the bridge, as it follows the same materiality and geometric expression. Final location is still to be determined. You can appreciate the bridge in full context in its closed position. Same view, now open position. As we move to a different lighting condition, now at nighttime, preliminary studies have been conducted to identify the location of lighting elements along the bridge, perimeter, and resting areas to provide sufficient light levels. The lighting strategy is to contain all light on the bridge while avoiding light pollution through the sky and water. The bridge slopes gently, allowing the necessary clearance to access the float home development on the west line or in on the east line. All associated inspirations are a means to an end. Instead of using existing elements of the urban fabric, the approach is to insert a new condition, one that complements the uninvasive function of connecting point A to B, and thanks to the commitment of every party involved up to date, we believe that this bridge comes closer to accomplishing something representative for Squamish and its community. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, is that it?
That's it, sorry, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, we will go on to a round of questions at this point, and I'll start at the top of the list with David.
Hi, I only actually have one question. It's to do with the metal cladding. Is that a Corten steel?
Yes, it's intended to be weathering.
Yes.
Okay, and then a follow-up question then, has there been any consideration given to sort of water dripping off that Corten steel and into the channel? I've used it on buildings before and it makes a rusty, wet mess at the bottom.
Yeah, Golder is acting as the environmental consultant on this project, and their preliminary comments at least have not yielded any major concerns with the extent of metals dripping into the channel. It's not intended to be a great amount of metals over the lifetime of the bridge.
Okay.
Also, we would think to seal the cladding, maybe. So we're looking at an option of letting it rust and then providing a sealant to stop it from continually rusting throughout the whole lifespan.
Perfect. Okay. That's my only question. Thanks.
Thanks, David. We'll go to Mike next.
Yeah. Just a couple questions. So earlier on in the presentation, I heard something, or I thought I heard something about parts of the bridge being developed in phases. Everything we see in the presentation right now, including the interpretive signs, benches, the lookout parts, and things like that, that's all going to be built at one time, or are there things that, like, is it meant to be phased, or is it all being done at once?
Susan here, I'll just jump in. I believe I mentioned phasing in one of my slides. It's the residential development on Waterfront Landing that's being phased. The bridge is a single project that will be built all at once.
Right, so everything we see in the presentation will be done all at once, like interpretive signage.
That's correct.
And then my other question is there any specific requirements for lighting due to navigation? Like, I can obviously see a lot of lighting, which I think looks beautiful, but was there like channel lighting or anything from the Department of Transportation on that end of things?
Yes, there is. And that was part of the NAV Canada approvals. The marine consultant has fully vetted the lighting requirements for the NAV channel. So you're probably not seeing the full extent of those lighting requirements on the renders. Right. I'm just like, I'm guessing there's going to be some red and green lights in addition to the lighting that we see. Yes.
Yes, so just to add, yeah, so the renderings are focusing mainly on architectural lighting, but yes, as Sandra was mentioning, there will be additional lighting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. We'll go to Jenna next for questions. Oh, we're not with Jenna on this one. She's sitting out. Sorry, I've got you on my list. The next would be Sarah then.
Hi there. I thought that there was some reference to ADA requirements, but can you tell me about the kind of area requirements around the furnishings and the bump outs? What, you know what the sizes, or is that too fine in detail to know that yet?
Yeah, the question correctly. If we're getting the question correctly, are you referring to the benches being accessible or any of the furnishings being also ADA compliant?
No, I'm speaking just about space around those elements. So whether or not a wheelchair can pass in front of those benches to the viewing area, and what spaces you've allowed there for that.
I see. Yeah, the answer would be a yes. We've allowed for minimum circulation areas in front of the benches and throughout all circulation corridors.
Just looking at it from even, from the view down, it looks to be extremely tight, that if there was somebody in a wheelchair there, and somebody's sitting at the middle bench, you're going to be interfering with their legs to get to the viewing area. So I think you might be trying to fit a little bit too much furniture into those bump out spaces.
Yes, the design will be refined, but the plan would be to make it fully accessible. And so that the goal is to allow everybody to make use of that space. The planning on the furniture makes a little bit refinement, but again, the intent is to have access, give full access to everyone.
Right. So then have you considered sort of just the sight lines of, somebody from a seated position trying to look out they're only going to be able to see really at that lowest point. And then you've got a railing that's kind of in the middle of that. You've considered dipping the railing just slightly even at the lowest point to allow better viewing?
It's certainly being studied, and we will promote full accessibility for every user experience to be enhanced as much as possible. So we do think and acknowledge that there are opportunities to make improvements on that matter, and that will impact furniture, and it's being studied.
Yeah, part of the strategy with the cladding is precisely to allow and take full advantages of this use. Maybe slightly a little bit quickly, but yeah, it's the cladding gets in at those points to allow people that are sitting to have a clear view of the surroundings. But again, this will be refined as we move along, and if there's an opportunity to improve the condition of the handrail, then that may be taken into consideration.
Yeah. And then with the interpretive signage that you've got sort of on the back of some of that bench seating that has the backrest on, is that proposed to be backlit?
Yes, the proposal, the initial proposal is that it will be backlit. This will be working coordination with the district. The opportunities to develop a strategy for what's going to be integrated, which cultural elements, and what kind of interpretive signage will be put on those elements. So right now, yeah, what we're showing is the intent of having that portion of the furniture to be backlit, incorporating some sort of cultural element.
Okay, great. Okay, that's all my questions right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll put Jackie next for questions.
Thank you, and thank you for the great presentation. My concern, it kind of goes back to transportation safety. It looks like there's road access to the bridge on the west side, but it looks like on the east side, it just ends in a plaza and the road is quite a number of feet away or yards away. In terms of emergency response vehicle access to the bridge, how would they access the bridge from the west side? I see how they could do it from the east side, but I can't see it from the west side.
That's a good question. The west side is, well, I should first start by saying the whole bridge is intended to be integrated into the trail network. And so I guess I would approach this question similarly to what would happen if anywhere along the trail network there was an issue and that needed emergency medical response. It's likely that they would have some ability to go on the trail network itself and to drive an ambulance or something like that to the foot of the bridge on either side, simply because it is on that 4-meter wide trail network. The downtown side is integrated into that trail network, and it's a foreshore walk that extends to the north and to the south along the sea dike. But it's not, I believe, accessible to cars under normal circumstances.
No, I didn't think so. I just was thinking strictly emergency vehicles.
Yeah. So I think the strategy there would be, if emergency vehicles had some bollards that needed to be removed to get a vehicle up there. I'm not totally in tune with emergency responses requirements to be up on that sea dike. So I don't have a really good answer for you. And then on the east side of the Bosa development, there's a large plaza area that I imagine an ambulance would be able to get into. But again, it's a sort of a pedestrian-friendly area that you wouldn't tend to see an ambulance driving onto to begin with. And I think proper road access is not far beyond the foot of the bridge to the west or to the east. And I think that's the most likely spot the ambulance would park.
Well, I'm thinking that if there was a national emergency, like a medical or, pedestrians and bicycles sometimes interact in not the best way. And if there's an emergency on the bridge and they needed to get an ambulance closer to the edge of the bridge, would that be possible from the west side? And it doesn't appear to be, but just something to think about for that semi-comment question.
Yeah. Well, we'll certainly take that into consideration. We're currently coordinating with District of Squamish and interfacing with the park development, so it's something to be considered for their development as well.
And my second question was, and I'm sorry if it wasn't crystal clear, were you considering any kind of greenery along the bridge, the pedestrian part, in any of the seating areas or anywhere along the bridge? I love the bridge. I just was thinking within the aesthetic of the internal part where people would be sitting or walking or biking, would there be any greenery included?
We had considered it through the design process, but ultimately ended up without including plantings on the bridge itself for a variety of different reasons. It's not to say, some small planters may make their way back in, at the bench areas, but anything that we put there would probably be quite small and minimal and easy to maintain.
Yeah, I was only thinking, maintenance is a thing. Just right on the seating is really where I was thinking of, not anywhere else on the bridge. Just want to keep that free and clear. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll go to Brent next for questions.
Great. Yeah, thank you guys for the presentation. Definitely interesting project. I had a question about the pedestrian and cycling travel lanes and whether or not there's any intent to separate or delineate either directionally or by mode.
There is intent to at least have directional lanes in either direction. And we have noted that there is an issue or possible issue with interfacing between bikes and people in the seating areas. And so we're working on strategies for that. And possible strategies include, making it hard for someone to be biking fast on the bridge, so artificially reducing speeds, as well as, appropriate signage and appropriate clearances between any furniture and the bike lanes in either direction. But it is certainly a consideration to date that we've been contending with.
Yeah, and another question about the surface material and snow removal, or whether the thought is that it just won't accumulate snow. Sort of understanding that there's slits that allow, just thought on that. If there is some accumulation, is it something that can a snowplow or a brush would be able to clear, or I don't know.
Yeah, we are expecting snow to accumulate on the decking, even though it is semi-porous.
Okay.
For the proposed decking material, seemingly the most suitable maintenance vehicle is a power brush to be pushed by District of Squamish staff or whomever, whether or not that piece of equipment lives in District of Squamish works yard or in some predetermined shed at foot of the bridge, yet to be determined. But that's our current thought on that. It has been raised previously by council and by operations. And as far as them not wanting to purchase a purpose-built or a purpose snow removal vehicle specifically for the bridge, we feel that a power brush would be a fairly moderate to low investment as far as equipment goes to serve this purpose.
Okay. And then another sort of follow-up to that is snow storage. If the intent would be to push all snow off the structure, or if there would be planned snow storage along the bridge.
Currently, no planned snow storage along the bridge. So we would be looking at this point to move it out to the plaza to the east and to the foot of Victoria and some predefined area to the west. Again, that one's a little bit TBD. We need to look at a little bit more in depth what sort of accumulations we'd be looking at on a normal basis and the amount of room required to move that snow to.
Okay. And then one final question on the profile of the bridge and the length of one side, maybe the west side had a 4% grade and the other was 4.75. You know the length of those two sections of the profile?
I do not know the length offhand. Ellie or Antonio?
Yeah, so do you mean the length from
just
one
like,
side of the bridge to the central opening portion?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so on one side it is 36 meters, and on the other side, I think it's between 50 and 60 meters.
That's all for me. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Brent. We'll go to Carlos next.
Yeah, thank you for that excellent presentation. A lot of my questions have been asked, but I've got a couple here in the bank. So can you confirm that the intent is to use that steel netting that you proposed in the presentation, not chain link?
It's intended to be stainless steel netting, not chain link.
Okay. And are there any habitat enhancements proposed for the in-water works? I know Squamish terminals have some similar piles, and they did some pretty simple netting around there that promoted some herring habitat. Have you had any investigations into the in-water habitat compensation pieces, if required?
The environmental consultant who's doing the overall site plan and DFO application, I believe, is looking at lots of habitat through the marina, through the foreshore, and through the bridge pilings. It's all one application. But yeah, we'd be looking to create habitat, and we're cognizant of the fact that there actually is artificial reef balls currently at the foreshore on the Victoria Street side that would be, protected and replaced after the construction was completed.
Excellent. And then I'll leave just with one comment that if the weathering steel does come up as an issue, I've used two products by Sculpt Nuvo and Modern Masters. It's an alternative kind of applied treatment to Cor-10. It seems that the wayfinding signage in Whistler and doesn't look awful and wouldn't have the same staining issues. So put that one in your cap. But that's all my questions.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Carlos. We go to Farzan next.
Sorry, Carlos. The one was called Sculpt Nuvo, and what was the second one?
Modern Masters. They used both of them, and I think that you can redo the treatment if there's graffiti on it. I had the same immediate reaction that David did. I know whenever we propose Cor-10, you always have to kind of put some river rock or something at the bottom that tends to get a little discolored. So,
okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for presentation. A quick question. I missed having it. Do you have a control number?
We briefly touched on where the control booth was in one of the renders that Antonio presented. We're currently working through that with District of Squamish staff. There's a couple of logical spots that make sense. With the eventual intention that this bridge is entirely remote operated from totally off-site, so any control room may or may not be there for any amount of time ultimately. There's some logical spots on the foot of Victoria Street, where the bridge begins at the foot of downtown, which is arguably the preferred location from the BOSA's perspective. And then we're reluctant to put the control kiosk onto the bridge itself for a variety of reasons. One is that it's quite large, and it would kind of be quite imposing on the visual. And the most logical spot for it to be, if it were to be on the bridge, would be right beside one of the operable portions. So you would see this relatively big room. So ultimately, yes, there's a control booth, and no, we don't know where it goes yet.
So it may be affected design of the bridge.
Absolutely, yeah. If it needs to go onto the bridge, it would certainly affect the aesthetic.
Okay, and if it's remote, I suggest that they should be able to communicate rather than by camera. Did they intend?
I kind of lost your audio there for a minute, but the intent is
to see the bridge, not through camera, but actually see the bridge if there's any accident or anything, so they can see what's happening.
I believe the fully remote operations doesn't require any sightlines to the bridge itself. But for the first year, part of the discussions about how this bridge operates is that it will have someone there physically to be, have sightlines to the bridge itself, as well as the CCTV cameras. So in the future, they're intended to be somewhere in Squamish in a dark hole, potentially. But in the near future, at or near this kiosk, using their eyes and using the cameras to supplement.
Okay. The structure of the bridge can support emergency vehicles, right?
That has not been a design requirement from DOS. DOS has not required ambulance to pass over this bridge.
Or what about snow removal?
Snow removal, so there is a requirement from DOS to be able to drive a snow clearing machine across the bridge to clear the roads on the opposite side of downtown. It's not actually to clean the bridge itself. It's to pass over to the other side.
So what are we going to do about the ice and snow on the bridge?
So with the current decking proposal being steel bar grading, the most suitable snow removal equipment would be a power brush.
Right.
That an operator would walk behind. It would be intended to be mechanized, so they're not having to push this thing. It's got its own motor that pulls it along. And then the intent would be to move the snow to either side and to store it there. And one thing of note would be that the operable span would need to be cleared, or we would want to certainly clear the operable span before opening it to avoid large expanses of snow falling on whatever lay beneath.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thanks.
Thank you, Parsons. Okay, my questions now. I'm just hoping that you can, Andrew, bring me up to speed on what has been the process now for public input from a design perspective only in hoping to achieve what is Squamish in ultimately a marquee central art piece in a way to our town here. I'm just curious if you can describe to me how it got to this point, how we got our design input.
I'm arguably not the best person to comment on that. Bosa and or Susan Stratus may be better off. There has been continued involvement on DOS's side since we became involved, which was about a year and a bit ago. We have received multiple rounds of comments from staff. But as far as public consultation goes, Brendan and or Susan may be better off to speak to that.
It's Susan here.
Hi, Susan.
Sorry. I'll just jump in. The public process was pretty much focused at the beginning on the Transport Canada requirements, which really looked at whether there should be a bridge at all because of the potential effects on the upstream boaters who need to use the channel. So most of the public involvement up to this point has really been aimed at resolving those issues and coming up with a operational plan that meets the requirements for navigation. So we're just beginning the process of looking at the design of the bridge in more detail. And it's somewhat linked to the park process downtown as well. There's a number of interrelated projects, including the new shoreline protection on the downtown side. So all of these are coming together, and I believe Council will certainly have an interest in having more public input on the design. I think we're just at the beginning of the kind of looking at the design rather than the functional aspects of the bridge.
Okay, so I read that to understand that there's been no early input to sort of design goals as far as what is Squamish, other than the industrial aspect, which in my mind would very much point towards logging. And that brings up my second question, which is what is the pushback on any sort of height along that bridge? As far as spires or any other aspect. You mentioned that you had tried a design that had a tower built into it, and obviously it makes sense to go to the two-side opening mechanism, but I'm just wondering why we don't have any height or any high points on the bridge.
We received a variety of different feedbacks, often conflicting. One was to keep the bridge sort of profile minimal and unobtrusive, and then others being to pay homage to, the mill site where the waterfront landing site currently resides on the east side. Squamish's marine heritage, Squamish's industrial heritage, etc. Ultimately, the mechanics chosen, which were hydraulic cylinders, don't require spires or any towers. Had we gone with some alternative systems, which are typically more suited for longer operable portions, then from a structural standpoint, it would have made more sense to put spires or towers, but putting them there solely for the purposes of creating a landmark as opposed to serving a function was not really part of the design team's desire. Does that answer part of your question?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I really appreciate it. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how there might be some input and where the opportunity lays, because I really do see this as a marquee. It really would be nice to have something that, you know, my 5-year-old would just get so jazzed up to go and see and check out and hang on. And I can see where you guys are going with it, and I appreciate a lot of aspects from that standpoint, but I think there might be a little more input coming, so I'm hoping there's an opening for that at some point in the process. I guess we'll move on to comments, and then we can talk about what we think a little bit more rather than just questions right now.
It's just to your last point, we have played with the cladding, with the height of the cladding elements. I know it's not a tower or anything, but there's a study certainly to be had with how high the Core-10 cladding extends above the bridge deck. And you really start to accentuate the bridge more the higher it becomes. But also you start to accentuate the bridge more the higher it becomes. And it's a fine line between too little and too much. And so it's striking that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we'll move to comments. And
all right, John?
Unless someone else has another question. Jackie?
It's just based on your comments about the height of the bridge, and yeah, I wanted to see some variations a little bit higher. But was there a wind study that was done, because Squamish is very windy, that would sort of deter people from building it any higher? Was there any sway issues if it went higher?
So we're at the pivotal point now, and with your blessing, we're moving into construction documents, and the intent is to start the wind study. We have the wind study people on standby, literally, waiting for the results of this ADP. So there will be a wind study performed. And one thing that is worthwhile mentioning is that at low tide, the bridge is quite tall. Like the renderings that were shown today show high water line, or water at or near high water line. But when the water is quite low, this thing grows substantially in stature. And so it's probably worthwhile considering that realization when we're talking about the height overall.
And so would that mean that it would go back to like a public consultation or back to the ADP as a result of that?
As a result of what, sorry?
Your wind studies and other studies that might affect the design and structure of the bridge.
We're not anticipating the wind studies to require altering the design. We're expecting the wind studies to confirm the approach that's been taken and to be basically doing our due diligence to make sure that there's not going to be any unforeseen issues.
Okay.
I'll just comment that I've been around long enough to see what used to be on that site over there. And there were several structures along the shoreline, including a tower yarder, which is a part of the logging apparatus down there. It's quite an interesting feature, or was an interesting feature down there. And never was there an issue with wind in any of those events. So, but I do appreciate that question, Jackie, because I was thinking that too. But I think any wind factor can be engineered so that it's safe. So shall we go on to comments? And I'll start with David on comments.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, thank you very much. It's excellent. For me personally, one of the most thorough and comprehensive presentations I've seen. I really like the design, and it's actually authentic, and it has real connections to the surrounding areas and the heritage. I'm fine with the height and the layout. I think it's very dynamic. I can't wait to see it built. My only comment would be just to urge you to clear coat that Corten. I understand there might be minimal drip from Corten steel, but they'll still be dripping along that baluster. So, yeah, that's my only comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. We go to Mike next.
Yeah, thanks for an awesome presentation, guys. It's been super thorough. I think the bridge looks great. I really like the lighting. I think my questions were just more it's just like, I love the way it looks in the renderings right now, and I'm just curious what it would look like with a bunch of red and green lights flashing all over it at the same time, along with the lighting that I see. Is that an echo on my end? But yeah, I think the bridge looks great. I think one other thing it would be good to know is just that there's been some consideration to how much it costs to maintain later on. Like I know you mentioned that there's consideration into the hydraulic system that you put into it, because it's going to be an asset, or it's going to be owned by the district, and the district's on the hook for maintaining it. That I hope that one, we're designing it to be beautiful, but we're also designing it to not be expensive to operate for years and years to come. So, other than that, it'll be an awesome addition to downtown. Thank you.
I think we will we'll go next to Sarah.
Thank you for a great presentation. I think you've been really thorough, and overall, I'm really happy with the design. I think the height is fine, and I think that it's going to stand out. And also, if it was to be much higher, the consideration of how that's going to interplay with the float homes. So I think that the height is good. I would just spend some time really looking at the layout of the site furnishings in those sort of pull-out viewing areas. I think that it's going to be tight. Like, if you've got somebody with a seeing eye dock, you actually need 1,200 millimeters, so 1.2 meters. I don't think you've got that. I mean, if you've got people sort of randomly sitting at various angles on there could be some conflict. So it may be that you want to remove, a little bit of the seating that's in there. I'm sure that you can explore that. The other thing is with the interpretive signage, is to maybe look for opportunities for tactile signage, or some braille that would be on top. I've seen some interesting things as well, like if there is ever, kind of a point of interest that on the railing, for instance, like if somebody, went along, that on the railing, that there's sort of on the underside, there's some braille that should indicate this is a point of interest to, look around and either steal a piece of art or that type of thing. So just some consideration for everybody. And then just with the seating, is that maybe on some of the flatter benches, and again, we don't have the full picture of the seating, but just that there is, maybe some armrests on some to allow seniors to upright themselves a bit easier. And is to maybe consider just moving the railing, have it dipped slightly, like not significantly, but maybe half a meter or something like that, maybe less, just so that the sight lines are going to be viewable for people who are of small stature, little kids, somebody with hair looking out on the water. And otherwise, I think that it's great. I really think it's really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll go to Jackie next.
Thank you very much. It's a stunning, beautiful marquee piece, and as a public art piece, I think it's going to be a wonderful attractor to Squamish, and a beautiful way for people to be greeted to Squamish. That's all I have to say. It's a thorough presentation, and I thank you for it, and I look forward to seeing it built.
Thanks, Jackie. And Brent now?
Great. Yeah, thank you. Just want to echo, as I'm echoing, echo the rest of the panel thoughts. I think it's a great presentation. I think it's something that's really going to be a key destination in downtown Squamish, and I think something in sort of that line of thought that with this being an asset that's going to be around for 75 years, I think it's worth exploring a wider deck width. I think that 4 meters with both pedestrians and cyclists and people stopping to look at views is not wide enough. I think that providing enough space that you're actually able to delineate and separate pedestrians from cyclists would be preferred. And I think that that's worth exploring, especially for something that could be really a key point for the community, and especially as downtown Squamish continues to grow. I think that you're going to see a lot of traffic, both commuters and weekend recreationists who are looking to explore the different sections of downtown Squamish. So that's my only comment. I think I really like the look, and I think that overall, it's going to be a great addition to the town.
Thanks, Brent. And we'll go to Carlos now.
Can you hear me now? Great. Thanks. I don't want to get myself in trouble here. I got fired up about this a couple weeks ago. I was a bit mouth agape when I heard some of the comments from council when this was presented to them. I think that this bridge will form an iconic piece of architecture here in Squamish. I think it's highly supportable. It's modern, but pays respect to Squamish's industrial past, and I think it integrates the level of finish that I don't think we actually have here yet, and that should be commendable. And the best of all, it's in the public realm. To Mike's point, I did hear in the presentation from the proponents that there was some phasing involved, and so I don't hope that the district secures some of those wayfinding aspects in this bridge, because I think they look fantastic, and I really hope that they're implemented, and hope that carries on through the Sea and Sky site. I think that'll be very valuable there. I think this bridge does something that we hear all the time through the Marine Action Strategy, which was it's a marine gateway, which we don't have. And so I think it will act as that marine gateway, especially with the volume of paddleboarders and canoes and kayakers I see on the Mamquam River Union, it seems. I don't think that this needs to go through further consultation. I think it hits the mark entirely, and I would actually, I really recommend that staff push this forward and get this done, because I think it's no small task to get this permitted in the way it has been. I'm going to disagree with Brent's point a bit, and Brent is a traffic expert, so he's probably right, but I will say that I did do a quick measure. I was in Copenhagen this fall, and I took a bike everywhere, as you do, and there were some very similar bridges, and those bridges, I just went to measure it on Google Earth, were about 4 meters, and it did seem to work. They did have the bump outs that were quite similar to what's being proposed, so while I don't disagree with you that wider would be better, I think that 4 meters in this location could probably work. They also had very similar materials chosen, and I think that those proved to be quite hardy, so I think your material choice is quite sound. And my last 2 comments are please take Sarah's comments into consideration, because those always lead to a better project, and I think are things that not everyone thinks about. And that the tax, so just this whole idea of the operations, and I think that some councillors balked at that, but when you look at just simply the tax revenue that will come from this development, that operations cost is a small percentage. And so I think as a community, if we want these higher quality amenities, there's going to be a maintenance aspect, and there's going to be a cost associated with that. And I think that we need to look at taxation as one of those forms to pay for that. And so Yeah, I can't support this enough, and I really look forward to it being built. Thank you.
Thanks, Carlos. And Farzan?
Thank you, Sean. I think it's a nice project. I think it's nicely done. I only urge the design team to consider emergency vehicle loads into consideration just in case, because it's going to be 5 years, and in case of emergency, should be able to take the load of the car at least. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Farzan. Okay, well, it goes without saying that I'm going to recommend that I feel like there needs to be more public consultation on this. I feel that it's a marquee structure in the middle of our town, and that there needs to be a high level of public acceptance and involvement in what happens in the end result here. I don't know about people's interpretation of what our industrial past is, but I can tell you what it is because I've been here long enough, about 35 years in the corridor now. I don't see it here. I'm finding this is far too lineal. I see talk and examples even on your chart of flowing designs and curves. We like to talk a lot about wind in town. We like to talk about bike trails that curve. These are the sorts of things that are Squamish. We have a very strong logging history. I mean, these are all sorts of things that I'm not seeing in any of this presentation or any of the thinking around the structure. And I'm sure that I think it is a very fine structure, and I understand Carlos's comments on you know, the aspects of getting this built, and I know that we will get it built, and I don't hope to add costs to what you're doing, but I just hope that we have a process where we can get a little bit more design input now that we've gone through the technical aspects. And so my recommendation is that this goes to the Public Art Committee, and that that committee could manage some kind of public consultation or feedback. So I would I'd say that let the minutes reflect that it's a comment coming from me that I hope that council will make the decision to take this into some kind of public feedback, and so that we can get a design that is very comes from the community, is very accepted by the community.
Can I ask a question on that? Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
There's no development permit required for this, is there?
I would let Susan talk to the process, but it's probably would do the developer well to consider that you know, this is an important piece in the community, of which, you know, we gave a certain amount of things to get this amenity, hoping that the community would have some input here on what is going to live in the center of our community for many years to come. And I'm sure the developer wants to know that the community is very accepting of it and very happy with it, and so on and so forth. So that's where my recommendation is coming from.
Sorry, but John, what do you recommend the Public Art Committee look at that? Is that in addition to?
Well, purely on the design, yeah, on the design side, I don't hear that we've had any real true input on the design side from the community, and that's just the way I'm hearing it right now. So I would leave it to council to make that decision whether they feel satisfied on the side of the input strictly for the design. It's a celebrated piece, it really is. So, you know, we're only striving to find something that really comes from the heart of Squamish here. So at any rate, that's my comment. Anyone have any other comments to go on? None at this point? Okay, so we go to recommendations. I'll read out the recommendations. A, that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented and does not need to see this project return. B, that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented, would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve following recommendations.
C, that the advisory design panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to resolve recommendations and return. And D, that the advisory design panel does not support the project as presented for the following reasons.
Sorry, Sean, I just reading the council report. I don't think that ADP recommendation says, as this is not development application, typical ADP recommendations.
Yeah, okay, you could be right on that. I did hear some recommendations in there that certainly will be on record, including, the clear coding of the court and so on and so forth. So we have the minutes and we will rely on those.
Yeah, if I were to do a recommendation, it would be A, but I think that's unclear from my overwhelming support.
We understand that. Yeah.
So, Carlos, you can acting or all acting. What did council say about the ADP?
Sorry, it's Susan here. I might just jump in. This is a bit of an unusual project and unusual to forward something that's a piece of infrastructure at one level to the ADP. So we have not listed the normal recommendations that we would normally find in our planning reports. But having said that, it's not a development permit project, but I know that council is very much interested in what the ADP is thinking and their recommendations. So we've heard quite a lot of interesting suggestions, including the one for additional public input, and I think we will certainly take all of that away and return to council with those comments. So just to clarify that because it's not a development application, we didn't list the normal 4 recommendations. So we're certainly listening.
Yeah, no doubt a special project gets a special treatment as far as process, so not your typical DP for sure. Okay, so any other comments from anyone before we wrap up?
I'd just like to strongly support your comment that it goes back to public consultation.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. At this point, on behalf of the design team, we appreciate the comment and the support. And as Carlos mentioned, it has been no small feat to get us to where we are today, given all the constraints and varying opinions. But certainly appreciate all the comments today and look forward to getting this built.
Thank you very much, Andrew. By no means am I suggesting anything is insufficient. It really is a wonderful looking project for what it is, and I'm just looking for a little bit more feedback for my own part. So thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Okay, members of the panel. We are at, unless we have any roundtable discussion, we would go to termination. And
I'll make that motion.
Sarah motions terminate. Carlos second. Anyone against? Okay, and now we're finished.